You bumped into someone in the hallway today. They walked into you. You said sorry. Someone sent you a message and you didn't reply fast enough. Your first instinct was to apologize before you'd even decided if you were actually late. Maybe you apologize before asking for help. Maybe you apologize before saying your opinion. Maybe you apologize when things go wrong around you. Things that had nothing to do with you. And part of you is almost embarrassed by it. Like, you can hear yourself doing it and you still can't stop. Here's what most people assume, that you're just overly polite, or insecure, or maybe you were raised with good manners, but that's not what's happening. The apologies you can't stop saying, they're not a personality trait. They're not a character flaw. They're a survival response. A program that was written into you before you had words for what safety meant, to keep you safe in an environment that felt unpredictable. You didn't develop this. You were handed it. Psychologists call this the Fawn Response. You've probably heard of fight, flight, and freeze, the three ways the nervous system responds to a threat. But there's a fourth. Fawn. Instead of fighting, running, or going still, you appease. You smooth things over. You make yourself smaller. You say sorry, even when there's nothing to apologize for, because your nervous system learned that conflict is dangerous, and your job is to dissolve it. Not because you're weak, because it worked. To understand where this came from, you have to go back. Think about what it felt like to be a child in a home where the emotional weather was unpredictable. Maybe a parent was prone to anger. You learned to watch their face the moment they walked through the door, before they'd even said a word. And in that half second of reading them, your nervous system was already calculating, is today safe? Or maybe the environment wasn't loud. Maybe it was cold. Maybe emotions were simply not discussed, and anything that felt like conflict, a disagreement, a need, a complaint, was met with withdrawal. With a parent going quiet, with the slow, awful realization that love was conditional on you not being difficult. In either case, your child brain solved the problem the only way it knew how. Preemptive apology. Remove the threat before it materializes. Neutralize the conflict before it begins. And nobody, not your parents, not your school, not any adult in your life, explain to you that this was a coping mechanism, that it was built for that specific room, that the rules of that environment didn't apply to every room you'd ever walk into. So you carried it. Pete Walker, a therapist who has spent decades working with complex trauma, first named the Fawn Response in his work on what he calls C-PTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Unlike PTSD from a single event, C-PTSD develops from years of low-grade emotional conditions, the kind that don't look dramatic from the outside. Walker describes the fawn type as a person who learned early on that having their own needs, their own voice, their own displeasure, put a relationship at risk. So they stopped expressing those things. They became specialists in other people's emotional states. And they made themselves useful, agreeable, and small. Research on attachment theory backs this up. Studies show that children raised in emotionally unpredictable environments develop what's called anxious attachment, a baseline state of hypervigilance toward the people they depend on. They become expert readers of tone, facial expression, and body language. Because in their experience, a shift in the room's emotional temperature had consequences. Here's what that looks like as an adult. You apologize reflexively, before you've even assessed whether you've done anything wrong. You feel a spike of anxiety when someone seems even mildly annoyed. You interpret silence as anger. You feel guilty for having needs. You say yes when you mean no, because no feels like an act of aggression. And here is the part that matters. None of this is irrational. In the environment where this pattern was forged, it was the correct adaptation. You were not overreacting. You were accurately reading a situation and responding in the only way that kept you safe. The problem isn't that the response exists. The problem is that your nervous system never got the update that says, the situation changed. So let's be very clear about something. You are not broken. You are a person who, as a child, wrote an extremely sophisticated piece of emotional software. Software designed to protect you in a specific environment, and it worked. You made it through. But software written for one environment doesn't automatically update when the environment changes, and nobody taught you that you're allowed to update it. The apology that comes before you've done anything wrong, that's not politeness. That's your nervous system running a threat detection scan and defaulting to the protocol that kept you safe when you were small and the stakes felt enormous. The version of you that wrote that program was not weak. They were brilliant. They found the one tool available and used it with precision. But you don't live in that room anymore. You are not that child, and the people around you now, most of them, are not the people who required that level of management. You are not the pattern. You are the person who can now see it. The question is, how do you begin to tell the difference? Here's the one thing you can try this week. Before you apologize, pause for 3 seconds and ask yourself one question. Did I actually do something wrong? Not, could this person potentially be upset? Not, is there any conceivable way this is my fault? Just, did I genuinely do something that caused harm? If yes, apologize. A genuine apology is powerful. If no, don't replace it with nothing. Replace it with something accurate. That sounds really frustrating. I can see this is hard. Let me help. You're not removing care from the interaction. You're removing false guilt. And for a nervous system that has been running on threat mode, that 3-second pause is the beginning of something different. But here's where it gets deeper. The Fawn Response doesn't just show up in apologies. It shows up in a specific fear that most people can't fully explain. The fear of asking for help. The moment you need something from someone else, something in you goes very quiet, very careful. That's its own system, built the same way. We cover that next.